Hello and welcome to our 7-8 minutes of weekly Torah talk. Our guest today is Rabbi Fred Morgan. He is a regional rabbi for the Union for Progressive Judaism in Australia, New Zealand and Asia. Hello Rabbi, thank you for being with us.
Hello Shmuel.
Our parsha this week is Tetzaveh, and in this parsha God tells Moses to receive from the children of Israel pure olive oil to feed the menorah, which Aaron is to kindle each day. The priestly garments to be worn by the Kohanim, by the priest, while serving in the sanctuary are the scribes, the ketonet, a linen tunic, michnasayim, linen breeches, mitznefet, a turban, avnet, a long sash, and also the garments of the high priest, the ephod, an apron-like garment, the choshen, a breastplate containing 12 precious stones inscribed with the names of the 12 tribes, and the me'il, a cloak of blue wool, and the tzitz, a golden plate worn on the forehead. We should also mention that this week we call Parashat Zachor, the parsha, the special parsha that we read before Purim. The first pasuk of Parashat Tetzaveh is ואתה תצווה את בני ישראל ויקחו אליך שמן זית זך כתית למאור להעלות נר תמיד, and you shall command the children of Israel, and they shall take to you pure olive oil crushed for lighting, to kindle the lamps continually. So, Rabbi, we moved from furniture, last week's parsha, to clothing. Why do we need to have all these details? Why is it important for God to decide for us in such detail what the priest must wear in the sanctuary?
Well, I'm kind of pleased that this portion is in the Torah. The mention of clothing, because clothing is so important to human beings, and this is a good way to begin the discussion. I mean, if we think about the things that mark human beings apart from other animals, clothing is probably the first thing that comes to mind. The story of Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, includes reference to clothing to cover their nakedness.
Right.
And I think that the Torah, in talking about this, is raising a whole number of issues about the role of clothing in our lives and the role of other marks of distinction that we carry with us in our lives, in terms of personal identity, in terms of social cohesion, social roles, authority, all sorts of aspects like that. So I'm actually quite glad that it's raised here. I know that Jewish tradition focuses on the symbolic meaning of each of the bits of clothing.
Right.
And sometimes it relates it to different behaviors, that we show. So in Midrash, you get this kind of thing. So the headgear always relates to the thoughts that we carry in our minds. Obviously, the Choshen Mishpat relates to the heart and expressing our deepest feelings for one another and for the tribes through our carrying of their symbols on our front and so on and so forth. Each one represents something like that, but basically what the Torah is doing is raising a question, the kind of question that anthropologists would raise today. What's the role of clothing in our lives? So if you go into a shul, a synagogue, what marks people off? Isn't what marks people off in a synagogue that distinguishes them from other religious groups, people who have other faiths, is the fact that Jews wear kippot and talesim,
Right.
talitot,
Right.
yeah, and things like that. And the Torah doesn't tell us what these things mean. It makes us aware of them, so that we then have to ask the question about the meaning. it's through asking these questions that we begin to explore what kinds of distinctions and definitions we want to live by. And again, I don't believe that the Torah tells us the answers to these things. I think that the Torah is drawing these answers from us.
So
for example,
they tell us what clothes we must wear, and then it is for us to search for the meaning of each and every garment.
Yes, I think it's like that. And I think that most people today, this is my impression from my children and from their friends, most people today are dominated by ideas of fashion, peer pressure, and whether they want to be seen as part of a group or as rebelling against a group or setting themselves apart from a group by the clothing that they wear. And by the way, also by their hairstyles, by their piercings, which are so popular in Israel,
Right.
by all sorts of signs that we carry with us. But really these things are much deeper than that. And I think that so we get a description here of the Kohen Gadol and the kinds of clothing that the Kohen Gadol would wear. But in getting these descriptions, we're also pushed to look at the clothing that we're wearing and how it represents us. So, for example, many groups of ultra-frum Jewish people wear a particular outfit, a uniform,
Right.
if you like. No different, really, from the Kohen Gadol or the other Kohanim, that identifies them in the eyes of the society at large and in the eyes of their peers and their companions. And I think that's quite deliberate. So some Jewish women will, as we know, cover their heads in various ways. And again, this kind of defines them. It defines their relationships, their affiliations, and what their values are. So, for example, progressive Jewish women now often will wear a talit. A kippah.
Yeah.
They'll also wear a
And
talit.
kippah,
They'll wear a
talit,
kippah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, which identifies them with an egalitarian movement. Other Jewish women will cover their heads in various ways that identifies them. I know that many modern Orthodox women will wear a scarf, but they wouldn't wear a wig or something like that,
Right.
a sheitel. And so too with men. Some men wear, as we know, a knitted kippah like this one, and some Jewish men will wear a velvet kippah like this one. And the fact that I have both of them right here in my cupboard shows that I try to transcend boundaries like that in my own life.
Right.
I want to feel comfortable in an Orthodox setting, in a progressive setting, in a Masorti setting, and in a secular setting. I want to be able to relate to Jews everywhere as Jews, not as specifics. But even that's a statement, you see. So I think clothing is a statement. But I want to say one more thing about that.
You strive to be the all-around Jew.
I am striving to be the all-around Jew. Why not? Lama lo. It's the perfect position for a Jew to be in, all around.
Right. Let's spend a minute or two on the other part of this Shabbat reading on Parashat Zachor. Tetzaveh is an uncontroversial reading. Zachor is probably the most controversial reading of Torah that we have every year. So tell me, how do we deal with this?
Okay, so my own philosophy of Judaism is one that sees Judaism as living with tension, living with difficult readings, tough readings.
Right.
I think the Torah is shot through with tough readings. Even Tetzaveh isn't so straightforward.
Yeah, but not as tough as.
I think that Amalek.
Yeah.
Well, I think that Amalek is. I agree with you. It's one of the toughest readings. Not the only tough reading, but one of the toughest. because it seems to be requiring us to stamp out those people who would be enemies of what exactly? You see, that's the key, I think, to the whole reading of Zachor.
To understand who is Amalek, what are we talking about when we
Exactly.
call for eliminating a whole group of people?
Yes, so some people would interpret Amalek as being a group of people. And by the way, if it's a group of people, then I would follow that line in Jewish tradition that says that group of people is no longer in existence.
Right.
So we can no longer think of a particular enemy in that way. But there's another line in the tradition that says that Amalek is really a tendency. It's a Yetzer Hara written large. You know, it's that overwhelming tendency that we find in human beings, whatever their beliefs, whatever their social structures, to see themselves over against the other, to find enemies, to justify their own identities, their own existence, their own realities. Look, we see this all over the world today. That people more and more are identifying themselves not for their goodness, for what they offer in and of themselves, but over against the other who's seen as an enemy in some way or other. And the only way you can do that is really by dehumanizing the other, by removing from them their human characteristics. And that worries me a great deal. In Parashat Amalek, it actually says that the problem with Amalek was not only that he attacked the Jewish people as they came out of Egypt and attacked the weak people in the back,
right.
You know, the stragglers, the women, but also that he lacked Yirat Shamayim, that he failed to have a sense. What does that mean, Yirat Shamayim?
Well, a sense of morality, I would say. It lacked a sense of morality.
A sense of morality, which can be defined as a sense of the otherness of the other person, their right to exist, and their right to be human, even though they're different from us. You know, it doesn't mean you agree with the other in every respect, not at all. But it does mean as soon as you lose that sense of human dignity in the other person, whatever their differences might be, then we go down a very, very wicked road, because then we become sociopathological. We can destroy others without feeling any sense of human responsibility, of moral responsibility for them. And Judaism has never counseled that. It always has counseled the opposite, that whatever we must do to survive, to protect ourselves, we can never lose that sense of the humanness of the other person. You know, we get that in over and over again in Shkalim, you know, where people are offering kapara for lives that they might be having to take later. So I think Amalek is really about that Amalek symbolizes those who lose their sense of the humanness of other human beings. And so what does it do for us? It counsels us not to fall into that trap. And there are plenty of Jewish people whom I've spoken with who, because they're human beings, they do lose sense sometimes of the humanness of others. Maybe I do that sometimes too. So it's something we have to guard against continually. So I'm rather glad that it says Zachor, because it's telling me that every year, at least at this time of year, when I might be most inclined to think of the Hamans of this world, the Hamans of this, as just worthy of death, and that's it. You know, to get rid of it, reminds me, don't act so quickly on my impulses. On those negative impulses, I have to remind myself of their humanity too. So I think it's a really valuable portion to have there. And there's a tension in it. It's not easy. It's not straightforward, but that's what it means to be Jewish. We live with those tensions.
Right. Rabbi, thank you so much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.